Chairperson Jim Sawtelle.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Robert Momartz.
Here.
Commissioners Phyllis Harden here, Bob McCall,
Here.
Jerry Malia, Jason Reese,
Here.
Lisa Ritchie, Anthony Stewart,
Here.
Steve Whitty,
Here.
Attorney Hillary Graham, Planner Steve Williams.
Here.
All right, thanks, Phyllis. First item is public comment on the consent agenda or non-agenda items. Doesn't look like we have any. Okay. All right. Next item is the consent agenda. Has everybody received the minutes of the February 27, 2017 meeting?
Yes. Yes.
Any additions, changes? Okay, can we have a motion to approve?
I move.
Commissioner Momartz?
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Stewart, all those in favor? All right, motion's carried. Okay, next item is discussion on the revised 2017 Planning Commission work plan. And I think maybe to tee this up, and Stephen help me out a little bit, I think we need to finalize our work plan and submit that to the town board for consideration, approval, and then we're going to move into work session after this. Is that?
That's
what we're
correct,
saying?
yeah. And I mean, the sequencing, I guess, is kind of important so that we just, before we start making recommendations on things, we actually get the items that we're going to work on more formalized. So
Okay.
I know that we discussed those. We basically what happened was we adopted a very general work plan. Then we discussed a more thorough work plan, and you guys took it to the joint meeting, but we've never actually sent it back to them for approval. So we need to send it back to the board for approval. And whether or not you want to, I mean, I think this was our what we fleshed out. It looks like on the 13th of March. I'm not sure if that's accurate or if that date just got updated as we've updated this plan, but it can be this detailed. It can be as simple as the agenda that I sent out, which just kind of reflected the two new items. But you know, we've had the Planning Commission has had a very kind of general, basic work plan over the last few years. Other committees have more detailed work plans, so we can kind of go either way. The way that some of the other committees' work plans are set up are to kind of tackle things as either like ongoing projects, which would kind of be like the wayfinding recommendations or review, code cleanup, that type of stuff that is always on there. And then they've also dial into what they want to accomplish, either quarterly or however they prioritize things or however they've organized things. So it's your thing to come up with and approve, and then we'll send it on to the town board. But I have both versions up and this one's pretty basic, so we can go to the more detailed one if you want to work off that one instead.
Okay. Anybody have any thoughts or preferences?
I mean, I'd like the couple of items that we talked about, transportation related, covering McCaslin and 88 and cut through traffic and all that kind of stuff. And I'd like to see the Northwest Superior plan. I'm not sure what's going to be provided to the board, so having that on a work plan specifically I think would be appropriate.
Yeah, I think the more detailed plan, this one, kind of spells everything out a little more in detail, and I would prefer this.
I agree.
I also agree with that.
Yeah, I do too. I like this one a little better. Gives the board a little more direction or guidance in terms of where we want to go.
Are there any changes you want to make to it at this time, or are you happy with it as it's drafted? I mean, I can edit it on the fly, get rid of hopefully this line break. Sometimes those don't go away so easy. And then basically, I was suggesting through the last update was we don't really need, and it sounds like quarterly is a little incorrect. We're a little bit more ambitious than that now, so
Maybe
I was suggesting
regular work sessions.
Yeah, or just we could say that regular work sessions to kind of save that last piece then, and then have those two other bullets or items 1 and 2 as subtopics topics to this.
Can I provide an update? I know 88th Street's on the agenda there. A little update on that. In our work plan, we have a campus drive study, a joint study with City of Louisville. And we've recently met with them in terms of scope of that work. And they actually suggested that we include widening 88th Street as an alternative to that. So what's going to happen, we've already met with a consultant to start to define a scope of work. And we would look at a couple options for campus drive connections into the town center, and then looking at the feasibility of widening 88th Street, both the bridge and on our side south to the roundabout, and on their side north to Dillon. So that may move forward, and may be something that Planning Commission will be involved in at some point, where we get the options and costs and valuations. So you may want to that could move further than you might have thought when you put that on your list.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks, Alex.
It might be worth us talking a little bit about the transportation plan and building that out a little bit. I mean, Commissioner Momart's put together a good review of 88th. We've talked about other roads and just generally wanting to think about improving the experience from a transportation standpoint of people who are coming in from a regional draw to be able to flow in and out of both the marketplace, the town center, in a comfortable way, right? And I think that's important to us. And then the ability for those of us who live here to have a comfortable experience moving around our neighborhoods and through town as well, and doing our best to keep the two from impacting each other, right? And so which I think is what we talked about, but I think the writing up there gets a little more specific to 88th and McCaslin. So maybe expanding on that a little bit before we send it over.
So you're suggesting, Bob, under sub B, 6 sub B, maybe drop something in?
Yeah, that it's more of a general approach to improving the transportation flow within the town for, again, to best serve the marketplace. I mean, obviously, town centers kind of designed and going in, but as that goes in, us also thinking about the issues we've seen over the last year. Now that the diamond is done, the high level of intensity coming off that diamond, trying to get into the marketplace, and can we do things to improve that? The cut-through traffic on Coal Creek Drive, the high-speed driving down McCaslin, the use of McCaslin as a cut-through, how 88th is going to be handled and how that ties into the town center. I just think, to me, we're the ones who live here, right? Staff lives and breathes this stuff every day, but they're not like here and living this and going into their driveway at home and pulling out and going to work, and we're seeing a lot of this. And so that's what I'd really like to see is us as residents really just be continuing to talk about it, so they can hear what we're seeing and hearing the feedback we're getting from the community, and seeing the raging fingers coming across the diamond as people are bonking horns and trying to make the turn into the marketplace and things like that. So I just, whether we actually execute something or whether they just get to hear the feedback we're getting and the experiences we're seeing, so that we can get these types of issues, just dealt with accordingly.
Well, I recall that was included in the discussion,
Yeah.
and included in the discussion around the McCaslin corridor. So would it be acceptable to add to that, including Original Town, perhaps? McCaslin corridor including Original Town? How would you want to do that?
I was thinking about flipping it. So rather than saying McCaslin corridor and 88th Street, boom, 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 that really the general description is, review and discuss opportunities to improve traffic flow throughout the town of Superior, including McCaslin corridor, 88th Street, entrance in and out of Marketplace, and other things that we may identify as we kind of move through this process. I was just sort of thinking of it as a traffic flow discussion, and making this just figuring out how to make this an enjoyable place for people to come in, get out, park, whatever, move through town, and protect the residents and make it so that we're not being impacted by this high regional draw that we've created, right?
What would you all think about maybe dropping that in as a new B and then making the existing B a C? Because, and just to kind of give you my thoughts on
Sure.
where that might fit. I take your point, and I think it's a good one, that we want a message to the board and to our staff that we want to focus on the overall balancing of objectives of, rational traffic flow and preserving quality of life for our residents.
Sure.
And then I kind of look at the transportation plan issue as, that's one where I think we're down to just talking about execution on a plan that's already in place, right?
Mhm.
Whereas I think, Bob, check me if I'm wrong, but I think you might be talking about maybe a little more broad perspective.
I agree with that. I'm thinking more as these things get executed, how's it working, and is it working because us living here and seeing it and living and breathing it every day, how is it working, and what should we be thinking about doing to deal with some of the issues that are arising from so I think that would be a fine way to.
If that sounds rational, does anybody want to take a shot at some language for Stephen Ayers?
Thank you.
I've been trying to throw words around, but I would say review the traffic. I'm just going to throw it out. We can wordsmith
Okay.
it, but review the traffic flow throughout Superior to improve the experience of both traffic from regional draw, residential and regional draw traffic.
Sorry.
Nope, you're right. Residential and regional draw. Period. Specifically focusing on movement in and out of Marketplace, Town Center, Louisville.
Retail areas.
And other retail areas.
And when we think of traffic flow, are we thinking only autos, but are we thinking bikes too at the same time?
I like that.
Is it-
I think everything, yeah,
Good question.
yeah. And I want to get a piece in there about that protection piece, right? How do we, maybe something like with a goal to create a clear separation between residential neighborhoods and our regional draw areas. The goal to protect our residential neighborhoods from the regional traffic, something to that effect.
Did you list something besides Marketplace and Town Center? Sorry.
What was that? Sorry?
Did you list something besides Marketplace and Town Center, or just want me to say another
Marketplace,
regional draws?
Louisville. I was just thinking about
Louisville?
coming,
Over the,
coming across 88th and the new Campus Drive,
Okay.
and yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, we should talk with Alex about that. He's got some great information on the pros and cons of roundabouts. I think that's a good idea, Bob.
And then the last sentence, with a goal to segregate regional traffic from residential neighborhoods within the town.
Let me just say, I don't like the word segregate.
Fair.
separate?
Yeah.
Separate.
Separate. Cheers.
Do you, I mean, are you happy with the order of this? I mean, I don't know if they read this without any context, whether or not they're gonna see these as prioritized A through C, or do you wanna prioritize
Or make them bullets instead of
any
A,
of
B, and
these?
C.
Yeah, however you wanna do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're all three, pretty equally important.
Yeah.
You know.
We could say in the number 6 header, not in any priority, as follows, or something to that effect. Yeah.
Are we gonna be building on this outline? Because if we are, I think we wanna have it pre-lettered and what have you, so we can amend it as we go.
You don't really, so no, this will be pretty final. I mean, so it needs to provide, the town board with something to actually, they may come back and prioritize, or they may say, we're happy with items 1 and 3, but we're not excited about 2 or whatever 2. So, but this is what their understanding of what you're working on for this year is. So it's not going to be dynamic, I guess. But so in that sense, it also needs to be either specific enough or broad enough for you to have the flexibility you feel like you need.
Well, that second bullet point seems to be pretty broad. I mean,
Well, I
Yeah.
think the second bullet point is sort of the big picture, and then,
yeah.
the other ones are subparts, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's sort,
Maybe
the
put that
second
at the
bullet
top.
down would be like an overview. This is what we want to address, or this is what we want to work on. And then here are the components are basically threefold. Northwest 88,
Yeah.
McCaslin.
And it's almost like number 2 would be the discussions that we're going to have around what we think we want to recommend or suggest or bring up,
Yeah.
which will likely then be handled within the transportation plan at some point now or in the future.
So are you guys thinking pop that second bullet point up to the top? Would that make more sense?
Oh,
Or are we thinking underneath?
Or underneath?
What were you, I don't know. I mean, I'm fine with the way it is too. I like the specificity of McCaslin and 88th Street discussions.
I agree. I was just thinking maybe the second bullet should be on top, and the others as
Oh, down below.
parts below or below it. So that one is sort of the overview, and then here are the 3 areas of need, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, the Northwest Superior plan, I mean, there's a big component of that is traffic, but I think there's a lot more under there besides traffic that needs to be looked at related to land use code and residential development, and whether the infrastructure is tolerable, we can tolerate the changes to the area if those
Well, then
things get
maybe
done.
That should be a separate one.
Yeah, that's what I thought. We put transportation kind of defined underneath the Northwest Superior small area plan, along with some other things.
And so, on the transportation part, under Northwest Superior Small Area Plan, it's, it talks about transportation, then planning, zoning levels, but then the next one down shows concerns, traffic.
Yeah, just
zoning.
traffic, yeah.
Yeah, it's
instead
almost
of
like
overdevelop- yeah, yeah.
like traffic, under concerns, traffic and should be with transportation, and I think we should do a transportation and zoning levels and classifications as 2 separate items.
That's probably a good idea.
It kind of jumps around there, I think.
Yeah, and I've got a bunch of notes and verbiage on that I can pull up that I wrote.
Can we, while you're looking for that, Bob, can we look at that those final bullet points, Stephen,
Yeah.
down at the very bottom?
Sorry, I've been
That's right.
formatting.
When we talk about low-hanging fruit, I was thinking, we threw out a couple of ideas: speed limits, increased enforcement. Maybe number 3 would be other ideas. I mean, we just want to leave it open to what makes sense, which is one of the reasons we wanted Alex's input on different things. What do you all think about that? I mean, you talked about narrowing the lanes, for example.
Striping.
Yeah,
Striping.
Yeah.
Whatever
Well, I don't
makes
even
sense.
think we need to get, I mean, what would
That's
be
specific.
something, yeah,
Before-
striping is specific. What are,
I-
if you grouped them all together, what would that term be?
Oh,
I would just-
traffic calming as well.
Mitigation.
Mitigation, yeah.
Yeah.
Other traffic mitigation.
Do you want striping, or do you want it just to be other traffic mitigation?
I think the
Is
broader
it
the better.
mitigation or is
Yeah,
it
calming.
calming?
I think it's calming.
Because I don't know if our goal is to keep people out of town as much
Yeah.
as it is
I think it's to call.
to have them recognize
You
they're
have
in.
to train them.
Yes,
Yeah.
to have them recognize that
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
they're in a community, not driving down the highway.
Did we want to have an entry for updating our data? I remember some of the early traffic projections were made a few years ago on certain assumptions, and the world has changed, and I think some of the projections have already been hit, even though they were aimed at 2035, I think it was, or something like that. And I'm wondering if we need to do any remeasuring, for want of a better word.
I'm wondering if that isn't we drop it in the second bullet point, review traffic flow in light of current data.
Or updating
Or
data.
D under safety, noise, and traffic, make a D, would be,
So the
Volumes.
concern would be our traffic numbers
right,
still accurate? Yeah. Traffic counts. I guess.
But I think the question is it a broader question like 2 has for the whole traffic flow of the community, or more specific to the transportation plan?
Yeah, and I think it might be a little bit more broader.
I agree.
That's my sense. It certainly impacts specifically 88th and McCaslin.
So you want it up here?
That's kind of what I'm thinking, but look, if folks feel differently, I'm fine either way. I'd probably say review current traffic flow throughout Superior. You want to mention updated data, using updated data or something like that?
I think, I mean, if we're reviewing the traffic flow as part of our work process, then an outcome would be that we recommend to the board that the data that we're going off of is already outdated, even though it's projected
Yeah.
into the future.
Right.
That would be one of our recommendations, is that they approve funding to allow
Yeah.
additional traffic metering or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
Can I give you a couple updates? So,
Sure.
we got a grant to install a traffic signal control system, and we're going over after another grant to enhance that, to provide additional devices for tracking and collecting data. For example, we may want to, we're going to get a couple of system-wide detectors that continuously count at certain locations, probably, a couple stations on McCaslin. We also, we've had a demonstration of units that we could put in our traffic signals that track vehicles. When vehicles go by with their Bluetooth devices, it kind of pings it. And then if you have 5 or 6 of these in the town, it matches it. So by doing that, we can get speeds and we can get travel time along McCaslin or other corridors. But also there are these units that are being widespread throughout the metro area. So we can start getting origin and destination, where's the traffic coming from? Like, is it coming from Candelas? Is it going to Boulder? is it impacted by 93 coming through McCaslin instead of going through 93? How much is coming from Louisville to Superior? So that type of data, if we get those devices, will be useful down the road to determine is this.
Can
is
you
this our-
issue tickets if they went too fast from 128 to?
Yeah.
And then we can start charging them, you know? So that's the type of data that we may be able to get in a few years if we get these types, you know, technology. So we're trying to take advantage of technology to start to answer these questions, and you got to be creative in the questions you ask, so we can go about collecting data to answer those questions. So if we get those devices, we'll have a pretty good feel of travel time along McCaslin. We're going to monitor McCaslin through Superior and through Louisville, through the DDI, to try to track it. And one of the reasons is we want to make the DDI and Marshall McCaslin as efficient as we can to get traffic in and out of the marketplace. So type of data you'll be seeing in the future, hopefully. And then, again, maybe we put these devices in parts of, regional Superior to try to track, who's going, where and what.
Or well done, or wherever you need to. Cool. So, yeah, I would agree. Are you okay with that, Bob? Just it
Pardon
being-
me?
Are you okay with that, just leaving it out and then it being an outcome of, something we may recommend along with other things, or?
It's fine with me. I'm not married to anyone.
I just want to make sure we have enough in there to make sure we can do what we need to do,
But also not make it a book.
but not make it
I think it's pretty good the way, as a whole, the way it reads. I think it's pretty consistent with what we've been talking about for the past few
Okay.
work sessions.
If we want to go back up to Northwest Superior, I had a purpose statement that I can try to pull a couple things out of, maybe. So can I just read this, and then we can maybe
Sure.
talk about it? So,
Sure.
the purpose I wrote was update the comp plan, land use code, transportation plan, and other applicable documents for Northwest area of Superior, including the existing neighborhoods, contiguous properties, commercial districts, roads, and major intersections within the area of a map that was on here. The specific goals that were identified or discussed were, one, ensuring that the existing communities within the planning area be a safe and livable place for residents. The marketplace is a distinctly separate commerce area that supports the town and region and is comfortable for all users to access with minimal impact to bordering neighborhoods. And then address planning vision for all areas that have development opportunities, including but not limited to original town infill and redevelopment, multifamily zoned areas between 4th Avenue and 5th Avenue right-of-way, light industrial zoned areas between 4th Avenue and 5th Avenue right-of-way, existing undeveloped parcels such as 76th Street, the paths in the marketplace, Rogers Farm, the RTD transit-oriented development, and then I had the Marshall Road realignment. So that was kind of the purpose. I think that's a big chunk for the work plan, but I don't know if that helps us.
I mean, it seems like what we have there probably touches on each of those things to a degree.
Yeah, I don't know if I like the concerns necessarily. I don't know that we need to list the concerns. Maybe we just Northwest Superior, just take number 2 out altogether, and, transportation plan,
We could call it
comprehensive plan, zoning level.
components.
Those could even be individual bullets themselves, but.
Bob had suggested just components, replace concerns with components. Is that part of the issue or not?
We could, components would be like development opportunities.
Because Northwest is more than just, transportation and stuff.
Right.
McCaslin and 88, they're pretty much just that. Whereas yours is more of a hybrid, which is a combination of a number of things that come under Northwest.
For me, I like the idea of being able to break things down. It makes it much more clean for me and clearer if we say, okay, we're going to address traffic, let's address traffic. We're going to address zoning, let's address zoning. and less address development. And so when we look at concerns, those are the concerns I think that we've identified for that area. And I don't think that those concerns have changed. I don't know, I mean, how else to look at that. I mean, components would be one way, but it's a part. I think looking at it that way is, these are the areas that we need to address and we can specifically address by breaking them down that way.
Why don't we try to mirror what we did down under transportation plan, so that whatever we do, they're both the same. So if it's concerns down there, it's concerns up there, and then we list that, or components or whatever, but we're consistent with, because it seems like what we did under transportation plan is pretty clear. If we did that same thing up there and got rid of bullet 1 and put those under concerns or components or whatever, it would
Change them all to study items. And it could be
study items.
Yeah.
Yeah.
transportation plan, comp plan, zoning level kind of gets merged with zoning classifications or whatever.
And
traffic.
study items probably works a
Yeah,
little,
I mean,
it doesn't call it a concern, it's something we want to address, we don't,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. We don't, and, because some of this stuff, we don't even know if it's a concern yet. I mean,
Exactly, yeah.
We're sort of making an assumption based on our experience, but
Right.
some residential and public process might change that.
That's a
Right.
good suggestion. I think that'd be good to put that in there.
I like that, yeah. And so I think I think those 3 items there are documents that might end up getting updated with this, so they could probably come out because, I mean, well, I guess we would study those, we might, study items might be just a review of those plans as relates to this area, right? That's probably one study item. We want to all be up to speed on how the transportation plan, the comprehensive plan, and the zoning relates to Northwest Superior, right? So that's one study item. Oops. Yeah, so it'd be, yeah, transportation plan, comprehensive plan, and and the chapter 16, or land use, I guess, land use code. Right?
Land use,
And another study item would probably be the undeveloped, or the development, I hate to use the word opportunities, because I don't know if it's an opportunity, but the future development possibilities in Northwest Superior, because we got to figure out, do we want to let all that happen? Do we want to encourage it, discourage it? Do we want to, present some ideas so we can attract the right people to do the right things,
So you want to call that item 4, future development?
Yeah, future development possibilities, or future development potential, yeah, or potential development, just potential development?
Mhm.
Yeah, potential development, yeah.
There's one other thing that you had in your description, and I can't think of what it was, but
That I rattled off?
yeah.
Let's see, so
There-
one
there's something
was,
that's in very important, or.
yeah, ensure that the existing communities within the area be a safe and livable place. Ensure the marketplace is distinctly separate commerce area that supports the town and the region.
Yeah, I think that.
Comfortable for access. And then address planning vision for all the areas that have development potential. I like that word a lot better. That's Park
Yeah,
Avenue?
I think what stuck out was the distinct, how'd you-
I had, ensure the marketplace is a distinctly separate commerce area that supports the town and region and is comfortable for all users to access with minimal impact to bordering
right,
neighborhoods.
and that all falls under traffic, I believe.
Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, it could be traffic as relates to separating
I think-
commerce
I think
from
we just leave it generic, and then
neighborhoods.
we can,
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Or neighborhood traffic protection or something. I don't really care how you know, well, I do. I mean, I like people to be able to use the marketplace and not get annoyed, you know, coming in and out of it, so.
We want the fire trucks to be able to get to your neighborhoods, if they need to
Yeah,
be able to do
exactly,
that.
exactly.
Did
They
you
can go
wanna add
over, they
another
can
one?
go over the
Sorry.
curbs through the park, that's fine with me. Yeah, we're not, nobody on Coal Creek is in favor of any type of mitigation that's gonna impact emergency vehicle flow. We've had those discussions and, you know, we don't want bumps and we can add stop signs because they can blow through those, but, you know, bumps and other things that force vehicles to slow down, we're nervous for exactly that reason.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yep, yep.
All right, are we at a point where we're satisfied with this?
Yeah.
Think so?
I did just want to
I
ask,
think we should have a footnote that we can reorder this
Yeah.
as the work develop continues or something.
In real fine print, right?
Yeah. well, you know,
We
sort of like
reserve
the-
all rights
The
and
ultimate
remedies.
asterisk for the boss.
Yeah, right.
and exactly along those lines, if issues do arise that we'd like to address in this commission, that we'd be able to do that as well.
Yeah, you know, and my view of these work plans is that I mean, we're not limited to
The
just
guideline.
discussing these
Yeah.
things, right? If something comes up during the course of the year and we all feel like somebody feels like we need to address it, I think we address it.
I mean, isn't this supposed to be sort of a roadmap, but not necessarily
Yeah.
an attack plan for war or something like
Yeah.
that? I mean, this is basic structure and details for now.
Mhm.
And as we get into something deeper, that may have all sorts of subparts,
Mhm.
or contractions for that matter.
I know we've gone off script on the work plan many times over the years, and we've certainly ignored items like wayfinding. I don't think, I think that's been on there for quite a while. So, I'm pretty satisfied with what we have, if you all are. Do we, just by way of process, do we need a motion to approve this? So
Yeah,
it
so
goes
you'd
to
be
the
making a
board?
motion in order to take this to the board for approval.
Anybody want to do that?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the 2017 Planning Commission work plan as a recommendation to the town board.
Second? Commissioner Reese? All those in favor? All right. Okay, so we're going to circle back to our work session, but for now, we have to wrap up our regular meeting, and I guess we're down to staff announcements. Stephen, we have anything?
We are scheduled to have a meeting on the 2nd of May. So, and we'll be discussing FDP and plat for track gauge within the town center. So
Okay.
that's the only thing I can think of. So I will save this and we'll forward it on to the board. I think it won't get included until their next, their meeting, which will actually follow your meeting. So they have a meeting next week. But that agenda went out yesterday,
Okay.
or today, actually. And so it'll go on for the 8th, right? Okay.
All right, with that, I think we can go ahead and adjourn. Does anybody want to take a break before we do our work session? I'd like to. Take 5 minutes.
Cool. Yeah, I gotta figure out how to open these things. I'll watch.
I'm thinking, we don't want to hold him hostage all night, and so my thought on it is, maybe we take up the transportation piece at the first part of it, and then if we want to talk further about the, the small
Northwest.
area plan,
Yeah.
we can maybe move to that
Sure.
next. And I don't want to hog the podium here, so please jump in, folks, but I think, Alex, to kind of tee this up a little bit, we got started talking during our prior work sessions about things that we'd like to drive, if we can, as a commission, and kind of narrowed it down to, obviously, the Northwest Superior work, small area plan, but then separately the transportation plan and trying to see if we can drive some execution on the traffic calming along the McCaslin corridor. And then that's kind of led into 88th Street as well, because there's been a lot of kind of unsolicited public participation in some of our meetings. It seems that a lot of the residents are, you know, they're starting to think more and more about 88th Street and have concerns about what that's going to look like. So I guess in connection with that effort, we started talking about, well, we all re-examined the transportation plan and looked at specifically at the traffic calming ideas that were generated through that, and wanted, I think, number one, to move toward a resolution that we would submit to the board and ask them to prioritize some of those measures in, you know, upcoming budgets. And then we also started talking about, well, are there any more cost-effective immediate measures that we could justify working in? Sure. You know, so that we don't have to wait until we have, you know, a big pile of money to start doing some of the more significant improvements. So that's kind of where we're at so far. Jason, did you have any thoughts?
No, but I'm interested because you did say that you received a grant for a traffic signal for intersection. Are you working on what would be the best use of that? Or do you already have the intersection targeted, or what's?
Well, it's a system for all, it's a joint system with Louisville.
Oh, okay.
Be housed here, and we control all the traffic signals in Superior and in Louisville.
Oh.
The main thrust of it is to just get a handle on what's happening. You know, right now, we respond by complaint, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and it's more, get more active, get alarms when things are not working, get a little more proactive about maintaining the system. If you notice, there was a glitch here a few, like last week, where the timing was kind of out of whack. And so we get calls, but I mean, we should learn about that stuff, you know, automatically and send people to respond to that. So that's the thrust of the current grant, and we have a proposal in. We're about to award it on Monday to a vendor, and in 2 to 3 months the system should be installed. But the next phase would be, well, how do we enhance it to let's you know, manage it and do some more analytics and try to influence, you know, traffic, and, you know, have more of a traffic responsive system where the signals are actually responding to the volumes on the road. Signal timing is changing, adjusting to the volumes that are on the road. Like the volumes change, especially at the marketplace. During the weekends, you have much higher volumes, and we know some of that, but unless we'll have data devices that are tracking this continuously and let us know, well, you reached a certain threshold, maybe you should go to a different timing plan. So that would be the next step, and that's the next grant we're now applying for. So that's going forward, and then again, the next that part of the next grant would put these devices in the McCaslin corridor to track vehicles, and then monitor travel time, monitor travel speeds, and then do origin destination studies that down the road would give us information about you know, improvements. For example, we're involved right now in the West Connect study, which is, you know, from along 93 down to Golden and down into Seaforth Avenue. And what do you do at 93? If we don't improve 93, and that's breaking down a lot of the traffic that's coming up from Indiana that's bound for Boulder, they have a choice, 93 or McCaslin. So if we don't do improvements on 93, they're gonna be on McCaslin. So O&D would give us an idea of how much of that traffic is actually passing through and going into Boulder, and what parts of Boulder they're going to. So that's kind of an enhancement that we're looking for in terms of the data collection, and then the monitoring, and then the management, having the traffic signals respond to some of the traffic.
That sounds really encouraging.
Yeah.
You're talking about I know striping was an item
Yeah.
that you talked about. And so there's an opportunity now in the next few months, because we do our long line striping every 3 years, and it's due for this year. So I'm about to go out to bid to restripe McCaslin and other arterials in the town. So if that's something that you want to do, you'd have to probably remove the white lines that are out there now, and then narrow them. Removing would be about $15,000, and then restriping them is just a normal cost that we would incur anyway.
Go ahead.
Sorry, is that true even if, I mean, the restriping we were talking about was narrowing and potentially making wider bike lanes or maybe buffering off some of the asphalt? Does it matter? I mean, does that change the cost much if the striping's a bit more significant than typical striping? Is that a?
I mean, wider lines?
I don't know if we know yet, but Boulder did some things where they.
I mean, buffered lanes,
They
double stripe.
they maybe bigger bike lane, right, just for the sake of narrowing the traffic lanes, but bringing them in tighter, and then whether you green off or stripe off or somehow make it visually apparent that the road is smaller, and that's what we don't know if we can accomplish that, but.
Well, it's pretty difficult. I think right now the lanes are standard 12-foot travel lanes, and I don't think on McCaslin you would go less than 11 feet. So you may pick up a foot on each side. Whether that does anything, I could work some cross sections to show you what's possible, and what can we do in terms of the buffered lanes that Boulder's gone to. A good example is on Iris and 119, what they just did over there in terms of the buffered lanes, and they have some more separation. But we have 36 feet of pavement to work with, and right now we're using 212s and 26s. So you may go to 211s and 7-foot lanes. So.
And why 11? Just I don't even know what the options are. Right. I mean, if you're trying to get people down to 35, 40, and make it uncomfortable to be going more than that. I mean, I know it's hard to do that without other things with just stripes, but narrower lanes tend to slow people down. So what does 11? What is a comfortable speed in an 11-foot lane versus 12-foot lane versus is there a 10-foot lane or
10-foot lanes I think would be okay for a road that's 25 miles an hour or less. And
okay.
if that's what you're thinking about with Caslin,
no,
then you can go to
not
10-foot
25,
lanes.
but
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you have a speed limit now of 45. You probably want to reduce that, but I'm not. That's another whole issue. But for 45, I mean, 11-foot lanes would be maybe appropriate. It's not 65 miles an hour. 12-foot lane is standard for freeways where you have 65 miles an hour, and then trucks are able to negotiate at that highest speed. 11-foot lanes may be appropriate for 45 miles an hour where you're dropping the speeds, but you still have trucks that are going down. A truck may be 8 foot wide, and they have to go down 11-foot lanes.
Right.
Down the road, 20 years when we have autonomous vehicles or vehicles that can go, they can stay in that 10-foot lane pretty easy.
Or that 8-foot lane.
Oh, an 8-foot. They have to have some separation from the other.
We can restripe it when it gets to that point, if ever.
I guess additionally, Alex, is there any data that says that reducing lane size and doing those kind of traffic mitigation efforts effective?
I can get you some data. There's been studies done on that, so I can provide that. I don't have it off the top of my head, what the percentage would be, percentage reduction. But I know there's been studies done like that, and that's the narrow lanes is a typical strategy for traffic calming. It's normally done on lower speed roads, not on an arterial like McCaslin, but I can provide some data and studies and give you a little report on what would be effective and what wouldn't.
I think one of the concerns that we all identified is that even though the current, I think, posted speed limit's 45, more often than not, we see cars coming down off of 128, I think mainly because of the grade, and they're doing a lot more than 45. They're doing 55, 60, 65. So and I kind of throw this out to you as an open-ended, question. If our goal is to get people to travel 45 or less, until we are able to get, a roundabout in at Indiana or a traffic light at Indiana, and things like that, what would be the best way, the most cost-effective way for us to achieve that? Is it just lowering the speed limit? Is it stepping up enforcement? Is it radar, signs?
Yeah, changing the speed, I don't think is going to make a difference. People are going to drive the speed that they consider, safe and prudent for that roadway. Putting up a sign. And in fact, a lot of times, you lower the speed, people, and then it's like, well, this sign is meaningless, so I'll just drive whatever I want. Sometimes when you actually increase the speed to appropriate speed for the roadway, the speeds actually drop because people think, well, that's reasonable. I think in this case, changing the speed limit is not going to do anything. I think more speed radar signs and ones that really catch your attention when you're going over, the 45 miles an hour would be probably the easiest thing to do in the short term to get people's attention.
And you had given us, I think, some kind of just off the top of your head quotes, or given them to Stephen, I think.
Yeah, I mean, a speed radar sign costs about $5,000 to $6,000.
$5,000 or $6,000 per sign. And that's wiring and everything to get.
Solar power. It's usually solar power.
Oh, it's solar. Oh, okay.
So they can be moved without, can they be moved? That was one of your, what we talked about last
Well, they're
week.
permanently installed. We put a pole
They are
in there.
permanent, okay.
Yeah.
But I was wondering, and that was one of my questions, was if you had pedestals set up in different areas of town, would.
Yeah, I mean, it's just difficult for us. And we have to hire a contractor or, get some equipment to pick it up. It's not
Gotcha.
easier. But I think we had that situation for a while, years ago, in some of the residential areas where we did that. And then we stopped because it was too costly to move them all the time because we didn't have the manpower to do it.
Was the
But
striping?
I think I would say just put permanent signs and put them between every major intersection. Coming down 128 to Indiana, that would be a good place for them. Where the declines are, where people tend to really pick up speed. We could just put more of them.
Sounds like a pretty inexpensive option.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have money like that in the transportation budget to handle something like that? I mean, how would we go about this?
Well, it's easier, I mean, if you make a request, then we put it in the budget for next year, and then we'll get it, the board will approve it, and we'll go. Because you probably want maybe 4, 5, 6 signs, so I don't have $30,000 just hanging around. I mean, so,
Okay.
well, I could put it in my budget request, and the board would, consider that along with everything else.
Yeah, okay.
When is the restriping scheduled to be done?
This summer. I'm just about to put it out to bid. It'll probably be a month before I put out the bid, and then probably 2 months before they're on the road, so.
So what is your thought of bringing it down to 11 feet? Is that a reasonable thing to do? Will that help? Is that a waste? Is it, buffering the bike lane, bringing it down to 11 feet?
I'd have to see whether a buffered bike lane, if that's your goal, I doubt if we could get something like that, that would be, I think what we could do is make the line wider. Ours isn't a standard line. I think we can make it 8, ours is 4 inches. We can stripe it like a bike lane. I think it's 8 inches or more, and make that stand out a little better.
And create the slightly narrower road?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And is that worthwhile? Does a
Uh,
narrower
that's-
lane help some?
A little bit. I think that's kind of standard practice in Boulder. The larger, the wider stripe for the bikes. We haven't done it
Yeah.
here, but it's certainly not a big thing for us.
And this is a lot about getting traffic to think about going a little slower.
Mm-hmm.
I think the bike protection is awesome.
I do
Most of the
too.
bikes that are using that are not your typical recreational riders that are hitting the McCaslin. But so my question is really more around, does a narrower 11-foot wide lane help in reducing traffic speed a bit?
I can I can give you the statistics, next time about what we expect in terms of the reduction in speeds, and maybe only 1 or 2 miles an hour.
Okay.
I mean, but I can, those studies are done, I can try to.
But it sounds like it helps.
Mhm.
Okay.
So let me add, just real quick, I think maybe if we can go at it a different direction. I live off Indiana, and making a left-hand turn from Indiana onto McCaslin sometimes is very dangerous. And I have teenage children that sometimes try to make that turn, and they get a little bit freaked out because cars are going fast from north to south. And then vice versa when they're making a left-hand turn onto Indiana off of McCaslin.
Sure.
Those cars are coming down hill pretty fast. Do you have any recommendations, Alex, about maybe how to make that less frightening for all involved? I'm just wondering. I think that's part of what the issue is. I mean, cars come down, they make a lot of noise. You have trucks coming down that hill, they're noisy, they're going over the speed limit. But when it really comes right down to it, it's sometimes pretty dangerous there at certain times of the day.
Are you suggesting a traffic signal? We have a roundabout in the plan, but that's probably down the road. I can tell you, a traffic signal would probably increase accidents in terms of rear end accidents, because when that light turns and people are not used to, or I mean, they're coming down, we'll have a lot more rear end accidents. We don't have a history of serious accidents at that location now that we can prevent. We could also facilitate the left turn by creating like a left turn acceleration lane out, similar to what, if you remember, they had at Sims and State Highway 128.
128, yeah.
If you remember that, I mean, that was a way to facilitate, left turn out. So especially in high volume situations where you can't find a gap, at least you can turn into the acceleration lane and get. So that's, those are the type of techniques we would,
Would
look
that
at.
be striped or a raised median or what?
It would be striped. We would need additional room, additional pavement out there to take the left turn lane farther to the south.
If we start going down that road, in your opinion, I mean, are we better off just looking at getting this roundabout in place? I mean, I know when we went through the whole transportation plan development, we looked at the benefits of roundabouts and from, traffic calming, but also facilitating smooth traffic flow.
Sure.
I guess you've made me a believer in that.
Well, to me, I mean, that is the best long-term solution in terms, if your goal is for traffic calming and, slowing traffic down through the corridor. We'll have 3 roundabouts now, and hopefully the people down coming up from Indiana the ones that don't like roundabouts, maybe they won't go that way. But, I mean, that would certainly slow the traffic down. I mean, you're coming down that hill and you're bottoming out, and here's something that's really going to make you slow down. And so that stretch between Indiana and Colton now becomes a lot slower.
Yeah.
Now you got to slow down there.
We talked months ago when you were in visiting with us about when is that, what's the game plan in terms of getting that constructed, and I think you said it's quite a ways out. I think one of the things we want to achieve is we want to come forward to the board with a recommendation that they prioritize that installation, whether it's next year or 2 years from now or whenever.
Sure.
But let's get it on the boards, and so I think in the meantime, and forgive me if I don't want to speak for the whole commission, but I think in the meantime we want to do whatever we can that's economically rational to try to mitigate some of these issues like Anthony's describing. And it sounds like you're thinking these radar signs might be the best short-term alternative.
How does increased enforcement price out? How's
Well,
that?
I mean, it's effective, and we're fortunate that we have patrol officers here are very good about doing their job, and I think that there's a pretty good presence and people know they're around, and they focus on the school areas, you know, obviously that's their high priority where the school children are, and they're out in McCaslin, and there's other enforcement issues there, so that's something you may want to consider, that this would add, maybe we get another patrol officer and increase the, not only McCaslin, but there's
Yeah,
other.
that's kind of
there's
where
other
that's kind of where I was headed. Especially if you make any changes to Indiana, you have to, like a speed sign, you've got to enforce it,
Right.
otherwise it's just
Sure.
a decoration.
Sure.
Am I correct in assuming that you like roundabouts as a better cure for the Indiana McCaslin intersection over traffic signals?
Well, if the goal is
Traffic calming.
traffic signal is not gonna,
Right.
it'll stop a few people, but a lot of times people are speeding through when they see a green light. Oh, I better speed up so I get
That's
through
right.
this.
Yeah.
So,
And they're already going 50 when they say that to themselves.
and the other consideration on McCaslin is that, so this year we're overlaying McCaslin from Coal Creek up to the roundabout, and then from the roundabout up towards Rock Creek Parkway. And we're stopping short of Rock Creek Parkway because there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. The drainage doesn't work, it's falling apart, traffic signal poles. So Rock Creek Parkway needs a lot of work. And do you want to leave it the way it is, or do you want to look at a roundabout there? I mean, that's more pressing just from the fact that I have maintenance issues at that location. And whether, I think the board is not in favor of roundabout there, but, I mean, that's my reading of the board, so if you have any weigh in on that one.
I forget, was that in the transportation plan? I know
think
we talked about it.
I think we took it out. It was initially.
Yeah,
I
it
think
was
we
in
got some
initially.
resistance from the board and took it out.
Yeah.
But that's one, we have to make some improvements to improve the drainage, and we got to decide, do we leave it the way it is, which is the cheaper thing to do, or we want to do something else?
So the question is, if you're going to have to go in and make the improvements anyway, is it a good idea, as long as we're doing it, spending the money?
Right.
to
I mean, I
spend a
need
little
to
more?
spend upwards of $1 million now to fix all the drainage in the pavement areas, and do we want to spend another $1 million to make it a roundabout?
Mhm.
So,
Traffic calming through construction.
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
Yeah, I like how the
Like that
roundabouts
out
have
here.
worked.
I prefer a
I
roundabout.
just think they,
you don't like roundabouts?
I do,
Okay.
no, I like them very much. I think they really keep traffic going at a slower speed. You have to slow down to approach them. Tend to go, they're narrow, again, as you're coming out of them, so you tend to stay a little slower when you come out of them.
Mhm.
I think they work really well.
The other problem in Indiana is that we do have drainage problems there, and we tried to fix them, and it's at the bottom of the hill, and
Yeah.
roundabout probably would improve that situation there.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of flooding down there, yeah. Well, I'm with Bob. I mean, I like what you've done with the roundabouts in town. I think it's great when it's for, pedestrian traffic, it slows everybody down to the point where pedestrians can cross, people on bikes can cross, and yet it doesn't back up traffic like a light will do, so.
Mhm.
I think I'd be completely in favor of us executing on the plan as quickly as we can.
The issue we're going to have to face are bikes, because bicyclists tend not to like roundabouts, and we are facing the issue at the new roundabout we're building now, because we have a bike lane, so you can either go up on the sidewalk, but the bikes we have out there don't do that, so they're going to go through the roundabout. But we're also putting in a third northbound through lane from the roundabout to Marshall.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're going to have 2 lanes coming through the roundabout, and then it becomes 3. So we got to get the bikes over to the outside and cross an acceleration lane that becomes a through lane. So what we're thinking about putting is a camera system that senses the bikes as they get into the roundabout, and we'll have a rapid flashing rectangular flashing device across the acceleration lane. So that starts flashing when it senses a bike in the roundabout. So we're going to
Okay.
try that out.
All right. So, just based on what you know in terms of budgeting and planning for the, transportation network we have, if we were to come together and say, hey, we really want to put that roundabout in Indiana on the front burner, how soon could that happen? I mean, I know we need to go through the budgeting process and everything else, but you know better than anybody what other urgent projects are hanging out there. So what's your estimate on how soon?
Well, right now, we have issues with our maintenance that we have. McCaslin's starting to fall about. Rock Creek, there's areas that we're losing on Rock Creek. 88th, we're losing. Colton needs to be milled and overlaid. So all of those, we've concentrated our dollars the last 5 years in the neighborhoods where we've rebuilt, a lot of the local roads that fell apart. And then all they've been giving me is $1 million a year to do the arterial stuff. And I probably have $15 million worth of backlog maintenance needs on those 4 roads. So it's, well, we can do a roundabout, but something's going to fall apart. So we're facing some big, maintenance issues right now.
A lot of deferred maintenance on those big arterials you just described. Is that what we're facing?
Yeah, I mean, we have deferred, McCaslin, for example, we seal coated, put a slurry seal up there from State Highway 128 down to Colton. We figured it'd last 4 years. We did that in 2012, and now it's been 6 years. And you can see how that's starting to wear off. And Rock Creek Parkway, we could spend $10 million on Rock Creek Parkway in some of the areas there that need to be fixed. So
Are those drainage issues primarily?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same soils we're battling. The roads weren't built for those soils, and the stuff we're doing now, we go back in and we did put fly ash, and we stabilize the base and build it to last, but it's expensive.
Right. All right.
So you got to prioritize those issues with, roundabout issue that you have.
Should that be part of, I mean, I'm just listening to this now and saying, we're talking about a transportation plan here, and he's now identified, I think, something we didn't talk about, is the streets within our subdivisions needing, again, it probably doesn't go against the traffic flow side of things, but it's another part of the transportation that's starting to fall apart, as you say, and we don't have that anywhere in our plan to talk about. And it seems like if we're going to prioritize and make a suggestion to the town of what's important, it seems like what you just said should be in there, because as a resident of Rock Creek, I guess I didn't appreciate what you just said when you threw out a $15 million number. That's pretty staggering. And maybe everyone else understood that. I didn't know that until you just said that. And so, to me, is that part of our job to include that as what we're talking about, or is that something else? Is that different?
Well, I think that's why you vote for a sales tax increase for road. I mean, that means $300,000 or $400,000 a year to the town. So in 10 years, you get $4 million, maybe that gets a chunk of that. And,
Yeah, by then that number's $25 million that you have to get fixed, right? I mean, it's just, you're talking about the same issue we're talking about in the country of old bridges, old roads, and things like that, deferred maintenance. I mean, it's a big thing, so.
Thank goodness ours aren't 20 years outdated.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I don't think they're to that degree, but it's just, we have a problem that's creeping up, and you're identifying it early, which is great. And I'm just bringing up the question, should it be part of what we're talking about, or is that a different issue? Is that a different?
I think that's a really good question, Steve. And, I guess my question, Alex, would be, I don't know what your budget looks like, but do you have a budget that's for, maintenance and repair, and then another separate item for improvements? Is it broken out like that, or does it all kind of go into one kitty and you have to go through?
Yeah, it's just one. Each year we put in specific requests but we have an overall financial model, and for 4 or 5 years, we're getting $2.5, $3 million a year to do the neighborhood roads, and we put a lot of money into it, which diverted, we couldn't do other things, and now I think town manager is basically saying, well, there's other things that we need to turn our attention, we're not going to put as much into streets.
When you say
And I think it's more, well, let's revisit this as the town center gets going and we start generating some revenues to the town center, maybe that, maybe we start putting money back.
Yeah.
So we've kind of, for 3 or 4 years, my budget's gone from like $2.5 million to $1 million. And so there's not a whole lot you can do with that.
Your overall budget has shrunk?
No, the street budget.
Oh, okay, I got you. But the money's been diverted to more.
I don't know if it's been diverted, but I mean, we built parks and other things that are going on, and,
So a roundabout would be part of your street budget
Yes.
hypothetically?
So maybe the park.
Therein lies one of the bigger problems then.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
Safety costs money, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could act and recommend to the board that they prioritize something like this, but at the end of the day, you got to deal with the reality of where's the money going to come from, right? Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts?
For Alex or in general?
Well,
For Alex, so he can go home.
For Alex's sake.
we want to hold him. It's
For
a hostage
Alex's-
situation
For
here.
Alex's sake,
All right, Alex, I think you got to get home to your family.
Real quick, do we want to, I know we can't do this in a work session, but if we're interested in the narrower striping and the signs, and he's going to be doing this work this summer, it seems maybe we ought to have that on the next agenda to.
I can report back the effectiveness of enforcement and then the narrow lanes and
And the signs,
bike
and then we could
lanes.
make a recommendation that we could pass along at our next meeting in
Sure.
an actual meeting, so that we can
We'd
discuss
still
a
have
little
time to
more
get
and
that-
make a recommendation, so.
Yeah, and then would we still have time to get that acted upon before you actually have contractors out there
Mhm.
striping?
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
All
cool.
right. All right.
And in addition, I'm sorry.
Stephen, can you make sure that that's on the agenda for the next meeting for us? Cool.
Yeah, good point, Bob.
Yeah.
And for my clarification, Alex, are we still, in terms of the radar signs and maybe some additional street signs, are we 2 years out on that? Is that what?
No,
or is-
well,
if we
the
if we
radar
get the board
signs
to
could
approve
be
that.
included in this, in the 18 budget, but we could order them this fall, if it's approved, we can order them, get them in January, February, so it's like 6 months. If that's pretty quick, that if you get that in the budget and get it approved.
Well, that would be, I think that'd be a big help. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have anything more for Alex before we turn him loose? Well, thanks for coming in,
Sure.
Alex. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, Alex. Hey, this is yours. Alex?
What are your wishes, folks? Should we tackle some of this other stuff, or you want to talk further about the transportation stuff, or we'll do whatever you want to do?
I have an item related to Northwest Superior at some point, but we can.
I guess what I'm thinking here is, and I'm thinking probably too much of it, a little bit like a long-term plan, but I'm thinking in terms of the transportation plan, I'm just drawing out on my paper here a timeline that says, because I thought you brought up some really good points. There's things we can do in the next 6 months that can help with this, and then there's things we can do in a year by adding roundabouts. But over the top of that, we also have to think about this deferred maintenance in here, and it seems like we should prepare something that says, here's our long-term to hit our goals of safety, to do this. Here's the things we want to do, and here's what they cost. And we get that information and then present it to the town board to say, here's the things that have to happen, here's what we think, and give them that information.
I agree with you, Steve. I think at least it would be helpful to the board, for the board to know that we're mindful that, there are other things that need to be addressed too. I'm wondering, just kind of thinking out loud, I don't know. I don't know to what extent we ought to get into
The money.
micromanaging, yeah, how they spend their budget, you know, I just don't know. I guess I think, you know, I think we've got a great town staff, and they are able to kind of look at things from the standpoint of what's, you know, we understand there are priorities here, but at the same time, we have to deal with the immediate, you know, repairs and things like that have to occur. So I'm sort of leaning toward, you know, let them tell us, let the staff tell us, you know, we just don't have, either we don't have the money to do that next year, or maybe we do, or maybe we can get started on it, and, you know, that's my thought. Anybody else have any?
My only concern is what happens, I would try to make some sort of a projection as to cost, both to do a project and the cost of money. You know, interest rates and things like that. When is a good time to make a move? Not necessarily one you want to, or one that, you know, feels good, but makes sense economically as well as what it can accomplish. And I think you know, I'd like to hear from a bank or whoever, some financial guys, to run some projections for us so that we know that, okay, if we delay this by 1 year, it's going to cost us 10% or 8% or something. If we delay it by 5, then we got other issues, and it's now 40%, and you also may have to do extra work.
Yeah,
So it's expanding what Stephen basically started.
Yeah, but I also think that then we start getting too much into the thick of things. Like you said, it's a, you know, there's a town staff and a board who gives the town staff direction. But our recommendation to the board would be, we feel like we should be able to move. We would like to see these improvements done sooner than they were planned, you know, for the future. What would it take? Can we set aside some funding? You know, can you give town staff direction to set aside some funding, or go out and hire some people, bring in some bankers and try to figure it out? And I think, because I don't feel like we should have bankers talking to us about, you know, timing and everything. And I think it's more of us,
No, just
you know,
data.
reviewing ideas and then providing, you know, just our suggestion to the board, and then letting the board make that decision to go to the town staff and give them direction to do it. Because I think we're going to wind up having, hopefully, we'll wind up having a lot of proposals coming from town center for us to start reviewing, and we're going to be getting busy in that. And so I just want to make sure that we don't start really digging in too deep in these ideas and we lose focus on the planning side of things.
That's a good point.
Absolutely, but I see your point as well, Bob, and I hear what you're saying. I think that giving some ideas about putting either maintenance off or improvements off is gonna cost more later. And I think that we can clearly say that without saying, this is a priority for your board. I think that what's gonna happen are the priorities are gonna fall in place by default. You know, we need to have our roads repaired. We need to have certain items fixed, and we need to put certain improvements in so that we can move forward with other projects. And I think that's how things are going to be prioritized. And I think if we can, you know, tell the board, like Commissioner Reese said, these are what we see as our priorities for our town. And these are some of the ideas that our neighbors have suggested and brought to our attention that might have some impact as well.
So one of the questions I have, when the traffic plan was completed, and Alex said that the roundabout up at the top was taken out because board members didn't care for the roundabout concept or whatever. Is that, you know, previous board, and then there's also like, we only had one roundabout at the time in town, and maybe the understanding of the roundabout and the actual value to it, and then the diamond being installed, you know, it was a crazy concept. Now they see, you know, the value of these. Maybe there's a different determination on putting a roundabout at the top. And as Alex said, if they're going to be doing the maintenance up there and spending $1 million, you know, our recommendation might be you know, please consider,
Spending a
you know,
little more.
spending more money and looking at the roundabout. And I think that's a good approach as well. I mean, we
Yeah,
look
that's
at the
all.
timing, we talk to Alex, we find out in the next year, we're gonna be doing the McCaslin maintenance,
Yeah.
deferred maintenance, catching up on that. And our thought is really consider putting in a roundabout.
Yeah,
My memory, I'm sorry to cut you off, Bob.
No
You go
problem.
ahead.
this is a good goal.
My memory on that, and Bob, I know you were part of this too, it is that when we were looking at the McCaslin corridor as a whole, there were plans for the roundabout that's currently going into town center. We had the roundabout at the Colton trailhead, and then there was going to be the roundabout at Indiana, and there was also talk of a roundabout up at 128. And I think what happened was the roundabout was floated up here at Rock Creek Parkway, and folks were looking at that going, geez, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 roundabouts, you know, it seems like an awful lot, you know. I don't think there was any, like, a lot of discussion about that, other than just, hey, we've already got lights in there, it may not be necessary. So I just want to give you that backdrop on it.
And that's what I assumed, is that we've already got the infrastructure for lights there, why take it out? You know, spend the money to take it out and put it in a roundabout, and I fully understand that, but I think that this is an opportunity for us to come back and say, you know what, lights might not be the best use there. And
Well, and if we think that the additional roundabouts are gonna create calming and
Mhm.
get these traffic speeds down closer to 45 and 40 than 50 and 60, I mean, we can approach it that way as well, so.
I'll try to find my notes, but I don't recall them giving serious consideration to a roundabout at Indiana. I thought maybe this is a bit too crude, but it was almost dismissed.
You mean in Indiana?
Indiana
or-
and
McCaslin.
McCaslin.
Oh, I think that one was baked in. I think it was Rock Creek and McCaslin.
They queered it, yeah, well, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you look at the plan, I mean, it pretty
Well,
clearly
we sure could
says-
use it now.
Yeah.
I don't know, does it, Rock Creek and McCaslin have the same type of traffic issues as some other places in the town? I mean, I drive that quite a bit, and it seems to me that it seems to work for the most part.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
my feeling too.
Because
Most people
people turn
turn right.
right, they
Yep.
turn right, and they've got a narrow turn left, and there's, because you've got the building over there, probably for the people coming out of the office building at 5 o'clock.
It's a minor annoyance.
Yeah, it's a minor annoyance, but I think, I'm with you, I think it flows pretty well.
Yeah.
So, And I think it gets into what we're talking about, if we get back to adding 3, or how do we prioritize, or how do we make a suggestion to say,
Yeah.
this one should be 1, this one should be 2, and if we're gonna spend
Yeah.
$1 million a shot. so.
That's a great point, Steve. I mean, if I were the king of the world and
You
you
are.
know, yeah.
You're the king of
Here.
here.
Could you go talk to my wife about
And this
that?
is your kingdom. This is good.
You might want a new kingdom.
No, but if you, you know, if we got an extra $1 million to spend, I would say let's put it in Indiana, you know, because we do have something in place at Rock Creek that seems to work. And we still need to do something between 128 and the roundabout down in Colton. I just think we do.
I've got one other question that he brought up that just got me thinking, and I don't know if we're too late for this, but I'll just voice it. So in the new town center, he made the comment about our roads in Rock Creek, that they weren't prepared properly. And so have we set guidelines, and Stephen, I don't know who can answer this, but are we preparing those roads so they last 10 years, 20 years,
That's a
and
good
not
question.
made like we did in Rock Creek? Or, because no reason to get into that when we at least can set some, and I don't know how that's done. I don't know who sets the guidelines for the roads. I assume if the developer does it, they're the cheap bare minimum that,
Yeah, but that's the one that's gonna cost us the most.
yeah. I don't know the answer.
We're looking at roads, I mean, as far as the application comes in, they have to become public, so I would assume that our standards have been changed, and that those standards now reflect what we're doing when we're repaving them, but
And do we include that, I mean, now that I'm probably adding more here, but should there be guidelines to how roads are I mean, is that part of us to make a suggestion to?
I think,
If it was my kingdom, yes.
I think from the public works standpoint, Alex, they do, and I remember being at a board meeting when they were talking to the developer, and there was a lot of discussion about, a lot of questions about this. And-
It was, okay.
And that there are standards, I believe, and that Alex is gone now, but I believe there are standards that have to meet for any new build for roads, but that's just my recollection of a meeting from a year and a half ago or 2 years ago.
And I think Alex alluded to that tonight by saying that, you know, they put down pavement and ash and all of this other stuff. And if you've watched them work on that roundabout, you can see that a lot of soil was excavated and a lot more brought in. And, you know, it looks intensive.
Yeah.
So.
Well, even rebuilding the interior, like the neighborhood roads, the amount of work that's going into that process is far exceeds anything they did originally.
Yes.
So I would assume that it's the same process.
But it seems like if we're thinking about, you know, when we think about what we're suggesting to the board as a part of our plan, and we looked at our what do we call them, standard, or what do we relabel?
Study
them?
items?
Study items, do we have criteria for our roads? Maybe we do, maybe it's just a, you know, we have the other codes and things like that, is there criteria for our roads?
Yeah.
Could we just ask Alex to report on that at
Yeah.
the next,
Yeah.
the next meeting?
Yeah.
I think that's just, he's gonna,
It's just a simple, like, email.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well, and wouldn't that be in the comprehensive plan?
I'm not sure if it gets into that level of detail, but
Sure.
They have standards for everything in Public Works, from, you know, the type of sidewalk truncated dome you gotta put in to, so I mean, they have a standard. Whether or not it's the standard that they're now rebuilding these roads to is really the question I can't answer, so. But they do have a standard, and I would assume it's different than what that standard was 30 years ago when Rock Creek was first developed, so.
maybe just to kind of try to wrap up the transportation part of the discussion, I guess what I would ask us to consider is perhaps by next regular meeting, we consider a motion, a resolution that we would put forward to the board, saying, you know, we would like to see the following things happen, short-term and, you know, not so short-term. And whether it's short-term striping and signage or whatever you all feel is appropriate, and then not so short-term, I'd really like to see us get this roundabout on the drawing plan, on the plan, you know, on the drawing board anyway, figure out when the money's gonna be available to do it, but hate to see it continue to get kicked down the road.
I think we gotta get our place in line established, so to speak, and hold that.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like that's the process we have to follow.
Because I know the one at 88th and Rock Creek Parkway, that roundabout's done wonders compared to what it was before.
Yeah, I'm a believer in those things. I mean, I know there are a handful of residents that aren't really crazy about them, but, I mean, it calms the traffic, and they're relatively accident-free, and yet traffic flows smoothly through them, so.
Yeah, flow is much better, in my opinion.
Absolutely, I agree.
Well, with that, do you guys want to move to small area plan, or what do y'all feel like?
Yeah, so-
Yeah, I mean, I've got one thing, and we don't have to go nuts on it, I don't think, at this meeting, but. So, I had a discussion with trustee Pennington last week. She was, one point, talking about maybe coming to this work session. She'd have been sitting for a while waiting for this part of the discussion, but if we recall, Commissioner Ritchie had expressed a desire to get, and I'm paraphrasing, I think I've got this right, so I'm sure she'll correct me if I'm not, but we were hoping to get some more direct guidance from the town board on this Northwest area plan. And so the trustee Pennington and I, she called, and we were talking about just the approach to this thing, and would it make sense to have the planning commission work on figuring out what we want for the Northwest area plan, rather than hiring a consultant to guide us in what we want for the Northwest area, right? So should we take time as a commission, which we've already put in our work plan to do anyway, so that's why I don't know that there's much action needed here, but rather than trying to get an immediate approval to do a comprehensive plan review and a transportation plan review and a land use code review, would it make sense, and so I'm posing this as the question, is would it make sense for us to get ourselves up to speed on the areas in Northwest Superior, get ourselves up to speed on the areas in a comprehensive plan, transportation plan, and land use code that impact those areas, which is mostly original town because you've got PDs for Marketplace and Sagamore and Coal Creek Crossing. And then we have a bunch of, not a bunch, but several undeveloped parcels, and we have the RTD, transit-oriented development, and I don't know where that's going, and I don't know if the Marketplace has any interest in residential. But, and sit down as a planning commission and figure out what we think is important and what we think we want as relates to those areas. So I did take some time and I won't read all of this, but in that spirit, I just jotted down things. Just basically, they all say discuss this, discuss that, which is, talking about traffic flow, talking about the separation from town center, the improved flow of the Diamond. A lot of the things I've already talked about. What do we think we'd want on the 76th Street properties, or the multifamily that sits on 4th and 5th, and Rogers Farm even, because there's no plan, or there's nothing out there for that at this moment. There is discussion that he may just want to build to his right, to use by right. That's the last I kind of heard in the whisperings. Do we want to get residents involved and at a planning commission level and figure out what we really think we want for that area, what we think makes sense, rather than, and then do we bring in a consultant and get the comprehensive, if we need to get, I don't know if we even need to do a comprehensive plan update, maybe we do a small area plan that the only update to the comprehensive plan is, scratch out, refer to small area plan ABC, right? And if there's land use code changes we want, and I've got some things I'm interested in that I just jotted down some thoughts on, what changes could we make to the land use in the zoning, not zoning, but the land use code in original town to just help discourage, 10, 12 blocks of mansions, unless that's what we want. I mean, I want to presume that people don't want to have the right to build mansions all throughout original town, because they certainly have a right to do that as well. But discuss what we want to allow in original town, and are there some creative ways that we might be able to encourage single-story development or push reviews for two-story developments, and if it is a two-story, try to articulate what we're looking for. Well, we know what we don't want, but not sure how you articulate what you do want, right? But can we figure those kind of things out? So the discussion was around, can we work on some of these items and try to get those done? And I don't know what I think of that. I just wanted to put that discussion out there that I had with Trustee Pennington, since she didn't make it tonight, and just see what you guys think. I think the drawback to this is, pushing to get some of these official documents updated quickly is of interest to me, specifically just helping to minimize the rash of development that's likely to happen in original town, and our current code really allows a lot to happen that I think most of us would not like to see, right, if they were all to happen like the Maple Street home. So that's the drawback to that approach, but so just throwing it out there for discussion.
Any thoughts?
I guess this is probably not the right time to ask you. And a few meetings ago, I was thinking I would really like to get out and walk through original town and really get a better understanding.
Yeah.
So now we can.
You don't mind moving slowly.
We can wait.
I did walk down here from home.
No, but I would, and I would like to, and I think it'd be valuable for all of us to get out and do almost like a field trip. Type thing.
Make it a field trip.
Yeah, get a better understanding of, and it's one thing to hop in a car and just drive through, and it's so quick, and you lose it, right?
Yeah, yeah, but
Walking the
walking
streets
through,
and,
yeah.
and actually stopping and talking about different aspects of it, I think it'd be extremely valuable. And I just wanted to kind of throw that out, and I don't
Oh,
know
that's
how
awesome.
that works as far as
Do we do that in place of a meeting? Is that permissible as a work session?
It's a
you
good
know?
question, I have to look into it. I mean, I think we, I don't know how.
Because it's
we-
late enough now, getting later. I mean, maybe we start at 6:30 or something
Yeah.
instead of 7, but do a little hour tour through the town.
I think that'd be good. I'd be in favor of that.
Yeah, I think that,
Yeah, I'd love that.
and I think putting that out and presenting it to the board is gonna help shape their focus.
And we haven't made an official recommendation to the board on this, or did we? Did we?
No, we haven't made an official recommendation on anything, and really how the process is supposed to work is for them to adopt our work plan before we really make recommendations on
Okay.
either one of the, I mean, so if they accept the work plan as it is, it'll give you the purview to make recommendations on any of those 3 kind of agenda items or whatever falls within the scope. So I guess that would be my suggestion, is that, you know, for the next meeting, which actually occurs before the meeting, they'll take action on this, you know, what you want to see at that meeting. Do you want to, like, have some, you know, like something written out that you actually want to start, you know, manipulating on the screen, that we get towards a recommendation on one of those 2 items or both of those items, or however you want to do it? But, you know, I think it would take a little bit of time, or maybe more time, if we were to just kind of come here cold and then start trying to draft something rather than edit something that's already been, you know, at least outlined, so.
Oh, and I've got a draft outline. we can start
You,
from,
yeah,
so-
you have a start.
I haven't made it official, but, and I can build on that, so we can talk about it. but-
Well, and see, I wouldn't be comfortable with doing that. I'm still not comfortable. I like the idea of going back and starting at kind of more of a nuclear level here and saying, this is the beginning. Let's identify what we'd like to do with this area before we make any recommendations about how to move forward with that. And I think that our town and some people have been guilty of doing that before. And for me, I feel like I need to step back and say, let's identify this area. What do we want it to be? Do we want it to be an urban area? Do we want it to be an area that's on the edge of an urban development? What do you guys want? What do you want to see here? And I think that that needs to be answered by more than just 1 or 2 people. I think that there needs to be significant community engagement around that, and let everyone who's invested in that area have some input. So that's what I'd like to see, and I really do like the idea of starting from the beginning and then moving forward, and instead of jumping ahead of ourselves and doing something that, well, we may have to undo later because it really doesn't fit what majority of our town wants.
And that's why I feel like it'd be valuable
Do a
for us to
walkthrough.
get there and do a walkthrough, and then, as you say, I mean, even to meet and talk with, you know, some of the residents of that area, or have them come in here and,
Yeah, and I know there's some stops of folks we could stop with, and they'd appreciate it, and maybe encourage them to come down to our meetings and start talking about some of these things.
Yeah.
And I agree with you to some extent. I think there's a balance here, because I also want to be careful not to go so far at the beginning that this is a 2-year-long process, because it'll be over. And I think there's an urgency that we're all sensing in the area with the activity around the open parcels around town, the open lands. I hear what's going on. I've met with people prior to being on the planning commission. I listen, and we know, there's a lot of activity, a lot of discussions, a lot of desire to make a lot of money in a very valuable part of town. And I don't want to prevent that, but I'd sure like it to mix with what, and this is where I agree with you, to mix with what the residents of the area would like to see, right? And so, how we can balance that, get people in here. Public process is in my outline, and, trying to figure out how to engage the public and get them down here. And it's possible that Daryl and I, and there's about 6 or 8 of us that have met in the original town, just a little group of people who've been trying to get the word out and talk to people about things. That's how the town hall thing got all organized, I mean, there's just a group who's concerned about what's going on around this neighborhood. And so that group can muster up a pretty large number of folks in the original town, so.
Well, I have to confess, I don't feel like I really know what's happening in Old Town well enough. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's something that you were
Yeah.
basically throwing out, but
Yeah, we can show all the
I'd
open
I'd like
parcels. and-
some opportunity where I can,
Yep.
I tend to think
Yeah.
visually, so I'd
Mhm.
like to see like an overview and where the holes are and, you know, what's being contemplated, so I get a
Do you want to do that next meeting instead of have Alex answer questions on
I
transportation? or do
mean, yeah, we could start, I mean, pulling
Or
up,
start there and maybe get Alex to come in later, or I don't want to get him here late.
Or
I know
just-
he has-
Well,
Bring
before,
them in and
don't
then
we
the one
have the
after.
board?
yeah, I mean, you'll have to, yeah, we're getting the cart in front of the horse a little bit, but we can still
right.
look at things, I guess, and have work sessions, and we'll actually have a agenda item on the next meeting, so.
Yeah.
But as Jason's suggesting that, you know, we could wait, I mean, more formally wait until we actually have direction from the board, and then, so that would push us to, you know, the second meeting in, May, but between now and then, you can do, you know, any number of things, you can walk the parcel. But I think to your question, I guess, is we could have a meeting where we pull up an aerial and start kind of, and you could even do, you know, Google's pretty good about dropping down into Street View, and I mean, we could
True.
see a lot of this stuff together and talk about,
Mhm.
you know, we could do that kind of exercise, but however you want to do it.
I think one of the things that I thought was really helpful were the small area plans that were sent out after last meeting, because it's the first time I had really ever seen that. And I think, to your point, I think what I am missing out of this is, I thought it was really good when they talked at the beginning is, what are our principles? And what are we trying to achieve? I think of objectives, principles, and I can't articulate what those are right now for this. And I think that, to me, that's the starting point. And I think, again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's where I go to, is I need to understand what are the principles of what we're trying to do, and then to do the plan. I think we start doing the plan without the principles, we're doing it in the wrong order.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
This is kind of a random question, Bob, but do you know if any portion of original town has been designated a National Historic
No,
District?
there were discussions around that 10, 15 years ago, and
Yeah.
there was really a desire not to do that. I mean, the reality is most of these homes they're boxes that were built, you know, for mine. They're not, you know,
Tiny houses.
beautiful, yeah, structurally awesome homes. There's some really cool stories about them. A lot of folks have tried to do their best to restore them, and you know, like we've done, we've kept a good portion of it, then we added on to it. But nobody wanted those constraints. But the Historical Commission has been working to identify a lot of those homes. I know Daryl's she tries to get involved a bit with them. She's on the Arts Committee, but she pays attention to what's going on with the Historical Commission, and you know, there are more discussions about identifying the homes and, you know, the history of those homes. And I know Daryl personally has an interest in, can we do some preservation? Can we do some more from the side of encouragement rather than from the side of restriction, which is what a lot of the historical designations do.
Right. Well, I guess for what it's worth, my 2 cents worth, I would echo what I think everybody is kind of saying, that first off, I understand the sense of urgency. I think we should move forward, be very deliberate about it. It does seem like the type of thing that probably that really requires a fair amount of public engagement.
Yeah.
I think most of the public engagement is probably going to come from residents of original town.
I mean, somewhat Coal Creek Crossing, there's a faction of folks in there that are very interested in this.
Yeah.
Sagamore is a little heavier rental, but there's a number of owners and folks up there too that have
Yeah.
interest.
Yeah. But I think Steve's point is very well taken too. It would be good if we could, you know, I don't want to get bogged down in process, but I think probably the first step is an important one, and that is, let's identify what our goal is here.
Yeah.
You know, what do we want this to look like? And we can work toward that. I think a tour would be great. I'd be completely in favor of it.
Do you want to do that I mean, if we did it, and I don't want to mess with anybody's weekend, but a lot more people are around either in the evenings or you know, on a Saturday, but You know, even a 6 or 6:30 on a Saturday, I think, you know, people tend to be around and it's nicer. Or 6 or 6:30 on a weekday evening, or, you know, sometime on a Saturday afternoon.
I think that would be fine. I don't know that we have to, like, follow rigorous meeting requirements here, do we?
If we're all gonna get together and there's gonna be more than a quorum, I
Then
think
we-
we have to notice
we
it
need-
at least,
okay.
but, I
So we
can
just have to
look into
notice
that.
it, we don't have to.
I think we'd have to make it a public, you know, and,
And
but-
I'm not sure if that applies to planning commission as much as it does board members because they're elected. But we can find out.
Yeah.
If it is, the planning commission has.
I mean,
to
at
be
worst case
noticed.
scenario, we could break it up into 2 or 3 different tours, you know, where you guys, a couple of you say you can get together on one night, and a couple of you say you can get together on another night or whatever,
Sure.
and then discuss it, you know, once we reconvene type of thing, so.
Can you email that to us, whether we can just do this informally?
Sure.
And I don't have to, I don't feel like I have to, because I've walked Original Town, I've talked with a lot of the neighbors there, I've knocked on doors and met with people and kind of understand, you know, where a lot of people are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
we
if you
can
need
do
to
that.
leave me out of that, that would be fine.
Why aren't you there? Come on. Yeah, if we can do it informally, I'd be, and I don't mind doing a couple of them either, you know, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be great, if we could just
Okay.
grab a couple of evenings or one evening and,
Yep.
you know, figure out if they're all available.
All right.
We
Well,
don't
why don't I
have to-
why don't we hear back from
Yeah, I'll look into
Stephen
it.
on whether we can do this informally or not, and then I'll schedule it informally and,
Mhm.
I'm sure
Okay.
do it that way.
I think we're all on the same page in terms of wanting to move forward, you know?
Yeah.
We just want to get a little more focused and.
Well, I kind of lean towards, I'd love the board to tell us to do this. I think the work plan's one way, but, I mean, if they want it more formal, I mean, when I was going up there speaking as a citizen, I was pushing for a formal review of the comprehensive plan, land use code, you know, and I still think that's really important for us to do, but how quickly we move into that, or whether there's work we do ahead of that to figure out what the principles are, you know, those types of things, I'm open to that, so.
And I guess maybe just to directly answer that question that you raised from trustee Pennington at the outset, I guess I would be in favor of us trying to kind of come to an accord before we go out and engage consultants to tell us what this.
What they
ought to
think
look
they
like.
want, right.
Yeah, because it really comes down to,
Yeah.
you know, we're the windows into the town here, and,
Yep.
you know, it's what the town
Yeah.
wants.
And that's the part that I did like about it, not being directed by what outsiders think we could really do with this area, because I'm sure there's lots we could do with this area. But, you know, what more do we want to do with this area? And then get consultants to help us formalize that, and, you know, if we even need to at that point. I mean, we might look at all this and be able to do it all internally with staff time and, you know, planning commission time, or maybe a little bit of consulting time, I don't know.
In terms of the sense of urgency, are there pending building permit applications, and things like that, that we need to be keeping an eye on?
The only things I know, and I haven't seen whether the townhomes at the corner of Fourth and, is that William? Whether that's been, whether there's anything coming forward on that or not. They have some use by right. Rogers Farm has use by right, so in which case those won't come forward as a proposal or PD. They'll just come forward with permit requests, right?
Correct, yeah.
Which we don't even see, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Can we be at least be made aware of those things? Can you make us aware of those things if they happen? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, they're
that we
public
can do
record.
much, but I think it'd
There
be
is a
important
building
for us to-
permit in for the corner on Fourth and William.
So there is a permit
There's
request?
a permit request in, yeah,
Okay.
for development of that site,
Yeah.
or redevelopment of that site.
Yeah, I mean, he, you know, couldn't really get guidance on doing anything differently. I don't know that it was left much choice after that last meeting, other than follow our code to do. I mean, it was made clear that we weren't gonna go, or that the board wasn't interested in trying to amend the land use code to support what he was originally proposed in a concept plan, so.
Well, further thoughts on the small area plan? I guess maybe to try to wrap that one up. So we're hoping we'll get direction from the board because we'll be submitting the work plan
Correct.
to them. And I think they indicated in our joint meeting that they were going to give us some orders to carry out the small area plan execution. And then, turning back to the transportation plan, if it's okay with all of you, I guess I'd like to see us move forward with beginnings of a motion at the next meeting to put forward to the board and ask them to consider taking care of some of this low-hanging fruit and getting some of the more meaningful improvements, at least on the drawing board, if that all sounds appropriate.
It's almost like we could say, okay, roundabout, low-hanging fruit, okay, and now we'll move over to Old Town and everything that's happening in there in the northwest while they're stewing on the first two things we want.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So Stephen, do we need to notice that, or how do we, I suppose we probably need to put that on the agenda for the next regular meeting?
Are you gonna try to make a motion at the next regular meeting, or just prep it for after they've actually given you feedback on the?
Oh, I guess we,
Yeah.
wait for feedback.
I guess
I
we
think
should
we're
be polite.
have it ready to go, so as soon as they give us the green light, then at our next meeting, we can.
Get it ready to go.
That's true.
I mean, I could try to take a crack at
Okay.
a draft, and so that we can work off of something, and if that's
Sure.
okay, I don't want to jump the gun.
No,
Okay.
I think it makes sense. We just schedule a shorter work session probably for following the agenda item on the 2nd, and then you can have it teed up and ready to actually vote on at the next meeting.
At this next coming meeting, or?
So you would get the work in place and have the recommendation, like, you flush it out, I guess, with everybody, and then you'd have it ready to
For
actually
the
just
following
act on
meeting.
at the following meeting,
Okay.
which would be the 18th or
Okay,
16th, whatever. Yeah, 16th,
Okay.
sorry.
if that sounds okay with you guys.
I keep coming up with an image in my mind of a tour bus, with the guy at the mic, there's a driver. Okay, now this is for so-and-so, and this is for I see you as the guy with the mic, obviously.
There's one of those in Boulder. What's his?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Banjo Bill.
Banjo Billy. Yeah,
You know
let's
what
bring him out here.
You know what I'm saying?
Let him
That
drive
way
us
we
around.
can just drive around, all of us, and
See,
see
then you wanna
collectively
come.
the same
Then I'll
thing.
wanna come,
Well, he
yeah.
serves beer.
I was just gonna say, there's a cocktail or something there.
We're gonna get somebody with a pedal bike at the bar.
There we
It
go.
wouldn't move fast enough.
The only other thing I wanted to clarify for everyone is that the Transportation Safety Committee used to be a quarterly meeting, so they're now meeting monthly to discuss transportation issues as well. So
Awesome.
if you guys ever wanted to attend or just see what they're discussing or, comment on, that's just another venue for you guys to express your transportation-related or
know what
traffic-related
their thinking
concerns.
is.
Can we get
Yeah.
those agendas?
Yeah.
But I could email out when they actually meet and let you
Okay.
know.
That would be
so.
terrific.
Yeah,
That'd be
given
great.
that that's a pretty big item in our work plan, that would make sense, so.
No worries.
All
Stephen,
right.
could you email us their schedule?
Yeah, that's what I was just
Okay,
suggesting.
sorry.
Yep.
Okay, anybody have anything else for the good of the cause?
When could we get a copy of the work plan? A new
Oh,
one?
this one? I
Yeah.
can send that out. I'll send you guys an email talking about when we
Oh,
can have these
super.
walk study or off kind of informal meetings or how we can do that. TSC meeting schedule, and then I'll send you the work plan as well. Is that
Okay.
all you
Sounds
need
good.
back from me? Okay.
Perfectly fine.
Sounds good. We done? All right, thanks, everyone.
Right back. I was getting a little head start.
Sure.